Hello and welcome to our FEMA Region 6 podcast. Today we're in Austin, Texas at the Texas Recovery Office, and we have a very special guest from the Texas Department of Insurance. Misty Hinote, how are you doing today?
Great, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. Well, it's our pleasure. You know, as we were thinking about our guests and who we're going to bring on today, the Texas Department of Insurance was one that just stood out. And part of that is the important role you play before and after a disaster happens. Many people don't even know you exist. So, Misty, can you tell us a little bit about what you do and what that means to the Texas Department of Insurance?
Sure thing. Yeah, so the Texas Department of Insurance is a state agency. So a lot of people have either never heard of us or think we sell insurance. So number one, we don't sell insurance. We're just a state agency. And that means we make sure that insurance companies and agents are following the law in Texas. But a big part of what we do is consumer protection, educating consumers about their policies, any kind of policy too. Home, auto, health, life, any kind of insurance you can imagine. We regulate it, and consumers can also come to us with any kind of questions, concerns, and complaints about insurance.
Oh, that's interesting. So do you have an enforcement arm?
We sure do, yes. So we make sure companies have enough money to pay claims. We make sure that companies and agents are licensed, that they're following the law. We have some pretty thick rules about insurance. So we definitely enforce if a company's stepping out of line or doing something they're not supposed to do or something that's not consumer friendly. We really keep an eye out to make sure that our Texans are protected. And when they buy insurance, that the company is going to have money to pay those claims, because that's really important.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So as the Federal Emergency Management Agency, we obviously have a vested interest in the whole insurance program. We want to make sure that consumers not only have the right policy, but understand what that policy means. So what is your role before a disaster?
Right. So before a disaster, it's kind of stuff we do year round. So we have our consumer information. You can come to our website. You can read about homeowners insurance. We'll tell you in plain language, what does it mean? What kind of coverages are you getting when you're buying coverage? Maybe some discounts, some things to ask your agents. We just, across the board, provide information. But we also, before a disaster, we have our 1-800 line. You can call it to any kind of questions you have about insurance. So maybe you're wondering, you know, I've heard about this flood insurance. I've heard about this wind insurance. Can you tell me about it? We're not going to tell you have to get a certain type of insurance, but we can educate you. So if you have any questions about, you know, how much is a lot of insurance? How much is too little insurance? Maybe you just want a sounding board. So getting the right coverages before a disaster, just education before a disaster.
So why is wind insurance important?
Right. So in Texas, we have a long coastline. We get a lot of hurricanes, as you've seen in the news. So wind insurance does not come as part of your homeowner's policy. When you buy a homeowner's insurance policy, you're getting the fire, the theft, things like that that would happen to your house. But it doesn't cover wind on the coast. That's important on the coast, because if you live in Dallas, if you live in North Texas, you will be covered for, like if there's a tornado in Dallas, your homeowner's policy will cover that. But when you move closer to the coast, those hurricanes are expensive. So most homeowners' policies aren't going to have wind in your policy. So you'll get what's called a Texas Windstorm Insurance Association. It's called TWIA. That's what everyone in Texas calls it, TWIA. So you'll know what that is. It's a TWIA policy. And your agent will usually tell you that. If you live on the coast, you'll usually know about the TWIA policies. But that's what's going to cover your hurricane on the coast. So it's really important, and it's separate from the homeowner. So that's important to know.
Is there any kind of waiting period for a TWIA policy?
There is. Once a hurricane enters the Gulf Coast, you can't buy a policy anymore. So it's not like you're watching the news and you're like, oh, here comes a hurricane. I better go buy that policy so it'll cover my house. That's not how it works. Because they don't want you to just buy a policy just for one hurricane, because then what if something hits a month later? You really need to be covered year round if you're going to buy wind insurance.
Okay. So then let's talk about flood insurance. How does that differ, and is there a waiting period for that?
Right. So flood insurance is also a separate policy. So there's a lot of separate policies. You have your home policy, you can have your wind policy, then you can have your flood insurance policy. But no matter where you live in Texas, flood is not going to be covered as part of your homeowner's policy. So that's the difference in wind and flood. So no matter where you live in Texas, you can get a flood insurance policy. And it's really up to you, your agent. You know, do you live near water? But all of Texas, anywhere really, it could be in a flood zone because water, could come from anywhere. And if it rains and rains like Houston saw,
Sure.
that would cover your flood. So really, it's up to you, but anywhere in Texas could be a flood zone. So that is a separate policy, and that comes from FEMA. So you'll ask your agent about that, and you can get a flood policy as well.
And is there a waiting period, or does it take effect immediately after you purchase?
There is a 30-day wait period. Yeah. So you want to get on that too. You want to ask your agent about that to be sure you're covered.
So then what about contents? I hear there's a different policy for that?
Contents will be covered as part of your homeowner's policy. Well, if we're
Okay.
talking about homeowners. So homeowners insurance, it'll cover your house and it'll cover your personal property. So think your furniture, your clothes, your electronics, everything you bring into the house. But there's a separate limit for that. So say you have like a $200,000 house, you'll get insurance on that, and then you have to decide for yourself with your agent how much you're going to get to cover your furniture. So
goodness.
if you have, right. So if you live in a small house, you might not have as much as say if you live in a 3,000 square foot house. So it really depends, and you're going to talk with your agent. And that's the thing about having a home inventory, which we can talk more about later. If you write down, if you go through your house, if you know how much stuff you have, because you don't want to buy too much insurance because then you're just wasting your money if you're buying more, but you don't want to have too little.
Yes.
Because if you think about your jeans, how much are they a pair? If your whole house is damaged or destroyed, that's a lot of property, your furniture, your electronics. So that is covered in your homeowner's policy, but you can get varying levels of coverage for your personal property.
Wow, that's a lot of information. So what can people do if they're listening and they're saying, oh my goodness, I didn't realize there was so much. How can I get more information? Where do I go? Who do I talk to?
Yes, so our website is probably the first place to stop, tdi.texas.gov. And on there, we do have that homeowners publication I was telling you about. You could find it on the website, or you can call us and we can tell you where it is on the web. But that'll really break down in plain language terms your what is the policy cover? And we make it easy to understand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is what it covered. Things to think about, like I was telling you, like if you have jewelry, if you have expensive computers, we just give you things to think about that you might want to ask your agent about. And then go to your agent. If you have questions, say, hey, agent, is this covered? I just got married. I got this new ring. I just built an addition on my house. Do I need more coverage? You can always go to your agent, and they should be there for you to answer your questions.
Wow, thank you so much. So after a disaster, why is it important that people say have an inventory of their contents and some of the other things that you were discussing? What is the role that you play after a disaster happens?
Right. So after a disaster, the first thing we usually do is we get with all the insurance companies and make sure they're ready to respond. Because policyholders, consumers, Texans, if something's wrong with their house, they want to be able to file a claim. They want to get the money. They want to rebuild. So we're going to make sure insurance companies are there, ready to respond. But we're also going to give a lot of tips for people. We're going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are things you can do. We know there's a lot of stress after a disaster. People might be out of their houses. They have to think about insurance because they want to get back in their house, but there's just a lot to think about. So we want to make it easy for them. And that home inventory is one way that you can make it easy. So you could either write down everything in your house. We know that's a big task. I'm not sure a whole lot of people do that. But at the very least, go through your house maybe once a year and take pictures. Videotape everything in your house. And why that's important, because when you file a claim after a disaster, say your kitchen was destroyed. So you're out of your house and you're trying to think, okay, what was in the first drawer? What was in the second drawer? How many plates did I have? Because your insurance company will reimburse you for this, but they're not going to reimburse you if they don't know what you have. So you have to be able to tell them, I had a $200 knife set. And if you have a picture of that, and they will reimburse you for it. But like I said, if you don't know what's there, and after a disaster, if you're sitting in a hotel with a pen and paper and you're trying to remember this stuff, it's just stressful for you. You have so much going on. So if you could pull up pictures on your phone, put them in a cloud, email them to yourself, have them somewhere you can get them outside your house. That'll make it so much easier, because the company wants to pay you. They want to help you, but they can't until you give them a list of your property.
What it is. True.
Right.
So, we could talk for hours, but what are some of the top 4 or 5 things that you want listeners, consumers to take with them after this conversation?
I would say number 1, be your own advocate. Know about your insurance, know about your coverages. Talk to your insurance agent maybe annually. Just make sure you're up on that. Another big thing we do at TDI is insurance fraud. So we try to protect people from being victims of insurance fraud. And after a disaster, a big thing is contractor and roofer fraud. There is no licensing in Texas, like a lot of other states. We have no state agency to license roofers and contractors. But we have an insurance fraud team who goes out to homeowners, to homes after disasters to talk to homeowners. Give them tips like be sure to check your contractor, get phone numbers, get references, ask the city if there's any kind of license. We just want people to be really careful when they're using contractors and roofers. And we know they're mostly good people, but there are the few bad apples out there. And if you have any questions, if you need any of those tips, you can also call us for contractor and roofer tips because we want people to be really careful about that. Any kind of insurance fraud, if you think there's anything going on, anything weird, someone comes knocking on your door. There's a lot of things after disasters that don't normally happen. You can always call us. We can let you know if there's an agent, if there's a company saying we can do this for you, we can do that for you. You can always give us a call and we can run you through some of that stuff. So being your own advocate, looking out for insurance fraud, and just knowing that TDI is there, that we can help with complaints as well. If you want to complain against your agent, your adjuster, your insurance company, if you don't think you're being treated fairly, if you don't think that they're paying a claim the way they're supposed to be paying a claim, if they're taking too long to pay a claim, they have so many days after a disaster to tell you that they accept your claim and then they're going to pay your claim. And if you're just waiting too long, that's just not acceptable. So give us a call. We'll call them. We want to get you back on track after a disaster and do as much as we can to help.
Wow, it's fantastic to know that an agency such as yours exists and that it actually provides a lot of protection for the consumers and for Texans in general. So Misty, thank you so much for taking the time today to join us. And definitely we want to invite you back.
Yes.
Next time we're in Austin. This is Patty Boncha signing off from the FEMA Region 6 podcast in Austin, Texas at the Texas Recovery Office with Misty Highnote from the Texas Department of Insurance.